Step one. First of all, we have to make sure we've got enough supplies to do the job. Some decon for the mice, at least a gallon, maybe a little more of antifreeze, the pump, and a couple of wrenches that are usually found here in the basement of the farmhouse. And that's pretty much what we need. We have to have a hose that's all the way down to the basement and then out through the kitchen to the back porch so that it'll drain off the edge and we can drain it. And we're going to put the pump in a basin over here, but there'll be things to do just before we start. The first thing we really want to do is make sure that the power to the hot water heater is off. If you drain it with the power on, you'll burn out the coils immediately. The next thing we want to do is go up to all of the faucets, the bathroom, the shower, and the sink, and the kitchen, and the back faucet, and make sure they're all turned open so that water can drain out of the system so it won't freeze. Okay, we've placed the sump pump into the low point of the barrel of the tub, and we've opened the valve, allowing the water to flow from the bottom of the tank into the tub. And when it gets deep enough, we'll plug in the sump pump. We don't want to let it run dry, but when the water gets deep enough, we'll turn the sump pump on, and that'll be pumping the water out through the kitchen to the back porch and out into the grass. So we'll see how that works. Yeah. Okay, we're plugging in the sump pump now, and it's going to drain the tub, but we don't want to let the pump run dry. We want to stop it just before it gets too low to cavitate. Okay, the pump is getting close to the bottom now. It sure saves a lot of carrying water up and down steps in a pail when you got this many gallons. So I think we'll cut the pump off now, unplug it, and let the water continue to refill, and then proceed to do it all over again. Well, we've let the water drain into the tub a couple of times, and while it's refilling again, we're reasonably sure that all the higher level of water is out of the system. So I'm going to remove the pressure gauge at the top using the little wrench and the fitting at the very, very top. Very top of the gauge, so that just the gauge comes off, and it's very tight, so I'm going to have to lay the camera down. Okay, I've removed the pressure gauge, temporarily set it aside, and I'm going to proceed from here to some of the other fittings. I'm going to drain the lower part of the pump housing, the little brass drain plug on the back, and there's another one on the side, and I'm going to attempt to catch the drippings in a little tin can just so we don't make too much of a mess down here. Next, I'm going to take the drain plug out of the back of the housing and let that drain, and there's really no way of catching that, so it'll make a little bit of a mess.
You can. Oh.
Okay, I'm going to take this drain plug out, the little brass one. Some things you just can't speed up. Okay.
There's the water.
So we're making a little, okay, before I reinstall the valve the pressure valve, pressure gauge, and the two fittings, I like to wipe a little of this electrical grease, just a little light amount, into the threads so it doesn't rust up. So just a little bit. You cut that off anytime. Before we put the pressure gauge back in, I'm going to use the funnel and see if I can tease a little bit of antifreeze into the housing, just as a additional safety measure that we don't have any freezing. Okay, reinstalling the pressure gauge now, and then I'm going to reinstall, after I put a little grease on the drain fittings that I removed. I'm also going to reinsert them into their appropriate, and be very careful. They're brass and it's really easy to cross thread them. So it takes a little care to try to do it by hand at first to see it's threading properly. Just a little grease will help the next time we have to take it apart. Okay, the water will only drain to the high point of the hose, so sometimes I use a lower bucket just to get the very last bit of the drain from the tank. We're getting close to the end anyway. Next thing that we want to make sure is that the refrigerator has been unplugged and that the doors have been put into a situation where they can't totally close, so they'll air out, and then we'll go on to something else. Next, we're going to pour a cup or so of antifreeze into the drain after we've disconnected the nozzle, the squirter nozzle, and shaken whatever water we could out of the hose. So now we'll proceed to pour some water into the trap so that can't freeze. Next, we're going to flush the toilet for the last time. That without the tank pressure will drain the back of the tank somewhat, and then we're going to proceed to sponge whatever water is left in there out so it can't freeze, and we don't need to put antifreeze into the back tank. I use a small sponge to remove the last of a little bit of water that's in the bottom of the back tank, sponge it out of there into the toilet, and then we're ready to put antifreeze into the toilet. Okay, the antifreeze has been put into the toilet. It only goes into the bowl. No antifreeze need go into the back tank, just to the bowl. Okay, we'll now proceed we've left the valves all in an open position, and we're going to pour some antifreeze into the drain of the sink, or the tub, and then also into the drain of the sink. That'll protect those traps. Another thing we want to make sure is all the doors to the upstairs and the kitchen door to the shed is closed tightly, and the door leading out to the deck is in the catch securely so that the rodents can't get in too easy. Well, the last thing to do now is to turn off the main power switch in the box and flip off the side light to the basement lights also, and then I think we're about done. Last but not least, we'll untether the garbage can from the porch and store it in the shed, and then we can say we're done.